Part 1. The Unexpected Suggestion. Nima sat at the kitchen table on a calm Sunday morning. Sunlight spilling across the counter while the smell of fresh coffee filled the air. It was the kind of morning that should have felt peaceful, but she sensed something unusual in the silence. Her husband, Mark, sat across from her, his fingers wrapped around his mug, his eyes thoughtful and a little uncertain. He had that look, the one he wore when he was about to say something that might change things. He began slowly, his tone gentle but serious. "Can I ask you something? A little unusual." Emma smiled, trying to lighten the mood. "You're making me nervous already," he chuckled softly, but there was tension beneath it. "No, don't be nervous. It's just something I've been thinking about for a while. About us." She set her cup down. The word us carried a weight she wasn't expecting. Their marriage had been stable at years of shared mornings, bills, family visits, and quiet evenings. They were partners in every sense, but lately their connection felt muted. They loved each other, but the spark that once made their conversations stretch into the night had faded into comfortable silence. "I've noticed you've been different lately," Mark said carefully. "Quieter. Distant, maybe? Like something inside you is." Tired, Emma's throat tightened. He wasn't wrong. She loved him deeply, but she had felt a strange emptiness growing inside her. Not unhappiness, just a quiet sense of being stuck. Mark continued, "I think you need something new, a change, someone who reminds you of who you used to be." She frowned slightly. "Someone." He hesitated, then said a name she hadn't expected. "Claire." Emma blinked. "Claire? My best friend, Claire." He nodded. "You've been smiling more since she came back to town. You talk about her all the time. Maybe spend more time with her. Try reconnecting. Go paint with her again. Do the things you used to love before we got caught up in routines." Emma stared at him, unsure how to react. It wasn't what she'd expected him to say. He wasn't jealous or upset. He looked hopeful. "You think I should?" "Try it. With her?" she asked, her voice soft. Mark smiled faintly. "Not in the way you're thinking," he said with a chuckle. "I mean, just be around her again. You've always admired her. She makes you laugh. Maybe she can help you find that spark you've been missing." Emma leaned back, silent, for a long moment. The idea felt strange, but she couldn't deny that something about Claire did make her feel alive again. Claire was everything Emma wasn't, any more spontaneous, confident, full of color and energy. They'd been inseparable in college before life took them down different paths. Claire had chased art and adventure. Emma had built a quiet, steady life with Mark. When Claire moved back to town a few weeks ago, they'd met for lunch, and Emma had felt something she hadn't felt in years: excitement. The conversation had been effortless. They laughed about old times, about the things they used to dream of doing. And for a moment, Emma remembered what it felt like to be light. Now, sitting in her kitchen, hearing her husband suggest she should spend more time with her best friend. Emma didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "I don't even know where to start," Schick said quietly. "Start small," Mark replied. "Call her. Go out. Do something fun. You've given everything to everyone else for years, Em. Maybe it's time to give something back to yourself." His words lingered long after breakfast. When he left for work, Emma sat alone, tracing her finger around the rim of her coffee cup. Try it with her. The phrase replayed in her mind over and over, stirring a mix of curiosity and guilt. That night, lying in bed beside him, she stared at the ceiling, lost in thought. Mark had fallen asleep, his breathing calm and steady. She turned slightly to look at him, his familiar face, the man who had stood by her through everything. There was no resentment in his suggestion. He simply wanted her to be happy again. That was the kind of love they had: mature, quiet, selfless. But his words had opened something inside her that she hadn't realized was closed. For years she had played it safe choices, safe emotions, safe dreams. Claire had always been the opposite. Maybe that's what Mark saw. Maybe he wanted Emma to find that fearless part of herself again. The part that laughed without worrying, that created without planning, that loved without holding back. The next morning, Emma sat by the window, scrolling through her phone. Her thumb hovered over Claire's name. She hesitated, then smiled softly and pressed call. Emma. Claire's voice burst through the speaker, full of warmth. I was just thinking about you. They talked for nearly an hour about everything and nothing at all. By the end of the call, Emma had agreed to meet her for coffee later in the week, after she hung up. She felt something strange flutter in her chest. It wasn't fear. It was anticipation. That night, when Mark asked how her day had been, she said simply, I called Claire. We're meeting this week. Smiled gently. Good. I think that's exactly what you need. She nodded, though she couldn't quite explain why her heart was beating faster than usual. When she closed her eyes that night, she pictured Claire's laugh, her carefree smile, the energy she brought into every room. It had been years since Emma had felt drawn to something or someone with that kind of intensity. She didn't know what was waiting for her, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of movement, like her life was shifting ever so slightly in a new direction, as the night deepened and silence filled the room. One thought kept echoing in her mind. Maybe Mark was right. Maybe she did need to try it with her. But what she didn't know yet was how deeply that decision would change everything that came next. This version of Part 1 is written in clean, emotional and mature storytelling style. It avoids explicit or adult content, focuses on emotional tension and character development, and is fully compliant with YouTube monetization policies. Part 2. Her presence stirred something. Emma stood at her front door, smoothing her hair nervously as she waited for the knock. She hadn't seen Claire in years. Not like this, just the two of them. No rush, no reason, except to reconnect. When the door finally opened to reveal her, it felt like time folded back. Claire was radiant, just as Emma remembered. Her chestnut hair was loose, her eyes bright with that same spark that always made people look twice. She wore a soft white sweater and jeans splattered with paint, as if she'd just walked out of a studio. Claire exclaimed, wrapping her arms around her. You look amazing. Emma laughed, feeling warmth flood her chest. You always say that, Claire grinned. Because it's always true. They spent the afternoon talking and laughing like no time had passed. Claire brought that easy energy with her, the kind that filled every silence. They talked about the years they'd missed, the things they never said, the moments that had changed them. Claire had been painting in California, traveling, living in tiny apartments, chasing sunsets and art shows. Emma had stayed home, building a steady life, one that was calm but predictable. When Claire asked about Mark, Emma smiled softly. He's good, steady as always. And you? Claire asked, her voice light but her eyes searching. Emma hesitated, then answered honestly. I'm okay, just trying to figure things out again. Claire nodded knowingly. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to feel alive doing it. Those words stayed with Emma. There was something about Claire's confidence, her way of seeing the world, that made Emma realize how small her own world had become. She wasn't unhappy, just unlicked. In the following days, they started meeting often. Coffee one day, a painting class the next. Claire had a studio downtown filled with half-finished canvases and the smell of oil paint and coffee. She invited Emma to paint with her, and at first Emma protested that she hadn't picked up a brush in years. Claire just smiled and said, "Then you're long overdue." Emma painted. Something inside her started to shift. The first strokes were shaky, hesitant, but soon she found a rhythm. Colors blended, lines formed, and for the first time in a long time, she felt free, like her emotions had found a voice again. Claire watched her quietly, smiling. "You've still got it," she said softly. Emma laughed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "It's just beginner's luck." "Or maybe it's just you," Claire replied, her tone warm. That night, when Emma came home, Mark noticed the glow in her face. "You look happy," he said. "I am," she admitted. "It feels nice. Doing something again." Mark smiled, and though his heart ached a little at the distance forming between them, he didn't say it. He only wanted her to rediscover herself, even if it meant standing a step behind her. As weeks passed, the bond between Emma and Claire deepened. They shared stories that only old friends could tell, late-night talks about fears, dreams, and love. Emma found herself opening up in ways she hadn't in years. Claire listened without judgment, always reminding her that she was more than her routine, more than her roles. One evening, they went for a walk by the lake. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in soft orange and pink. The water shimmered with the reflection of light. Claire stopped suddenly and said, "You know what I missed most about you?" Emma looked at her curiously. "What?" "The way you see beauty in small things. You used to stop just to look at the sky. Somewhere along the way, you stopped looking up." Emma felt a lump form in her throat. "I guess life got busy." Claire smiled gently. "Then let's unbusy it, even if it's just for tonight." They sat by the shore, their feet buried in cool sand, talking about everything and nothing. There was an ease between them that felt almost sacred familiar, but charged with something new. A quiet, unspoken connection was building, delicate but undeniable. The next day, when Mark came home, he found the two women sitting on the floor surrounded by canvases, their clothes covered in paint, their laughter echoing through the house. He leaned against the doorway, watching them. For the first time in months, the house felt alive again. "Looks like you two are having fun," he said with a grin. Emma turned to him, smiling brightly. "It's messy, but yes, we are." That night, as she stood in front of the mirror brushing her hair, Mark wrapped his arms around her waist. "You look different," he whispered. "Lighter." She met his eyes in the reflection. "I feel different," she admitted. "Claire reminds me of who I used to be, and who's that?" He asked softly. "A version of me that didn't overthink everything. Someone who felt alive." Mark smiled, though there was something bittersweet in it. "Then maybe this is good for you." Emma nodded, but deep down she felt conflicted. The happiness she felt when she was with Claire wasn't just about art or nostalgia. It was deeper, more emotional. There were moments when their eyes met and time seemed to pause. She didn't understand it, didn't want to label it, but it left her breathless. The next week, Claire invited Emma to a small art show downtown. The gallery buzzed with chatter, the walls lined with color and life. Emma watched Claire move through the crowd, confident, magnetic. People admired her art, her spirit, her ease. Emma felt proud and a little envious at the same time. After the show, they stepped outside into the cool evening air. "You were incredible tonight," Emma said sincerely. Claire laughed softly. "I just did what I love." "Maybe that's the secret," Emma said. "Doing what you love without worrying about who's watching." Claire looked at her, her gaze steady and kind. "You should try it too." Emma's heart skipped. There was something about the way Claire said it, simple but layered with meaning. She didn't know if Claire felt the same pull she did, but she couldn't deny the growing connection between them. It wasn't romantic in the way movies showed it. It was emotional, Soldepa, reminder of what it meant to be seen. When Emma got home that night, Mark was waiting up for her. "How was it?" he asked, smiling. "Beautiful," she said quietly. "She's amazing." He nodded slowly, studying her face. "You really care about her." Emma hesitated, then said, "Yes, I do." It was the truth. Claire had become a mirror showing Emma parts of herself she'd forgotten existed. But that reflection also scared her. It made her question what she wanted, who she was becoming, and what this new feeling really meant. As she lay in bed that night, the sound of the rain against the window, Emma couldn't stop thinking about Claire's words, her laughter, the way she made everything seem possible again. She didn't know where this path was leading, but she knew one thing for sure: something inside her had woken up, something she couldn't ignore anymore. And as she drifted to sleep, one thought echoed quietly in her heart: this is only the beginning. Part 2 is written in a clean, emotional and mature tone, focusing on friendship, self-discovery, and emotional awakening. It contains no explicit or adult material and is fully suitable for YouTube monetization. Part 3. A moment of clarity. The evening was cool and calm when Emma decided to invite both Mark and Claire for dinner. It felt after weeks of change, laughter, and confusion. She wanted things to come full circle. She had spent all day cooking, setting the table carefully, lighting soft candles that flickered gently across the room. There was a strange mix of nerves and peace inside her, like she was preparing for a conversation that needed to happen. When Claire arrived, she greeted Emma with her usual bright smile, carrying a bottle of wine and a small bouquet of wildflowers. "For you," she said, handing them over. "To thank you for bringing color back into my days." Emma smiled, arranging the flowers in a vase. "You've done the same for me," she said softly. A few minutes later, Mark walked in, relaxed and cheerful. He hugged Claire and complimented Emma on the meal. It felt easy, natural, even but under the laughter. Something deeper lingered, something unspoken between all three of them. Dinner began lighthearted. They talked about travel, music, and little things that made them laugh. But as the night went on, the laughter softened, replaced by a more thoughtful silence. Emma could feel both their eyes on her, Mark, steady and calm. Claire's curious and warm. When the plates were cleared and the last of the candles burned low, Emma finally spoke. "I need to say something," she began, her voice quiet but firm. "This past month, it's changed me." Claire tilted her head. "Changed you how?" Emma took a breath. "I've remembered what it feels like to be alive. To wake up excited. To create. To feel again." "You reminded me of that, Claire. And Mark, you saw it before I did. You knew something in me had gone quiet." Mark leaned forward slightly, his expression soft. "All I wanted was for you to find yourself again. I didn't realize how far you drifted." Emma nodded, tears stinging her eyes. "I think I forgot who I was before life became routines and responsibilities. And then Claire showed up, and suddenly everything looked brighter again. It scared me, honestly. I didn't know if I was allowed to feel so much." Claire reached across the table, touching Emma's hand gently. "You're allowed to feel everything," she said. "That's what makes you human." The simple kindness in those words broke something open inside Emma. She looked at her friend, the laughter in her eyes, the compassion in her voice, and felt a wave of gratitude so deep it almost hurt. Mark's voice was steady when he said, "You don't have to apologize for changing. People grow. Maybe this is just another version of you, one that needed to come back." Emma looked at him, realizing how lucky she was to have someone who understood love in its truest form, not possession, but trust. "You're the reason I could even start this," she said. "You gave me space to find myself again." Mark smiled faintly. "That's what love is, isn't it? Letting the person you love keep growing even if it changes the shape of everything." The words lingered. For a while, none of them spoke. The air was thick with emotion, but it wasn't painful. It was honest. After a moment, Claire stood, moving to the window. The city lights reflected softly across her face. "I should probably go," she said quietly, "before we all say something too heavy for one night." Emma got up, walking her to the door. They stood there, neither wanting to end the moment. "Thank you," Emma whispered. "For what?" Claire asked gently. "For reminding me who I am," she said, "and for being the spark that woke me up." Claire smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Don't thank me. You already had it in you. I just helped you see it." They hugged longer than usual, filled with meaning neither could put into words. When Claire finally walked away down the quiet street, Emma stood there for a long time, watching her disappear into the night. When she turned back, Mark was standing by the dining table, clearing glasses. He looked up, his eyes calm, but full of questions. "She means a lot to you," he said softly. Emma nodded. "She does, but not in a way that replaces anything. She just opened a window I didn't know had closed." He walked over, gently taking her hand. "Then I'm glad she did." That night they sat together on the couch without saying much. The candles had burned out, leaving only the soft glow of the city through the window. Emma leaned her head on his shoulder and he kissed her hair. In that quiet, she realized something important. It wasn't about choosing between two people, it was about choosing herself. Claire had reminded her what it meant to feel alive, and Mark had shown her what it meant to be loved completely. Both had given her something she needed to grow. Over the next few weeks, life settled again, but not in the same way. Emma began painting regularly, sometimes with Claire, sometimes alone. Her studio became her sanctuary, a place where her emotions could breathe. She even started selling a few pieces at local art fairs, something she never thought she'd have the courage to do. Mark supported her every step, proud and patient. There was a new kind of peace between them, the kind that came from honesty. They had weathered something unspoken together and come out stronger for it. As for Claire, she remained a close part of Emma's life. Their friendship evolved into something steady and comforting. The confusing intensity that once hung between them settled into deep respect and warmth. Sometimes they'd laugh about those first weeks, the awkwardness, the unspoken feelings, the late-night talks that went too deep. They never defined what that connection had been. They didn't need to. It had been real, and it had mattered. One afternoon, months later, Emma stood in her studio painting by the window while the golden light spilled across the floor. Mark came in quietly, holding 2 cups of coffee. He set one beside her and smiled. "Looks like you've finally found your rhythm," he said. She smiled back, her brush still moving gently. "I think I did." He stepped closer, wrapping an arm around her waist. "I missed this version of you." Emma turned, meeting his gaze. She never left. She was just waiting for a reason to wake up. They stood there in the quiet for a long moment. The world around them still. Emma knew life wasn't perfect, never would. But it felt real, honest, beautiful in its meances. She had learned that love wasn't always about grand gestures or easy answers. Sometimes it was about allowing each other to change, to grow, and to rediscover what made them whole. And somewhere out there, she knew Claire was smiling too, painting her own story, just as Emma was painting hers. It wasn't the ending Emma had expected. When Mark first said those strange words, "Try it with her," but it had become something far greater, a journey of rediscovery, a test of love, a reminder that sometimes the heart just needs a gentle nudge to find its way back home. As the last rays of sunlight touched her painting, Emma whispered softly to herself, "I found me again." And this time, she meant it. Part 3 concludes the story with emotional closure and maturity. It stays clean, romantic, and introspective, focusing on personal growth, love, and emotional awakening. The story contains no explicit material and fully complies with YouTube monetization policies.